Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Senor Nerd Podcast. And I have here with me Chef Ramon
Hey guys.
and Chef Raul.
Howdy, howdy.
And today we're here to serve you a review of The Bear, a show that came out in Hulu in 2022. A show that when I first watched it, I really enjoyed it. And the second time that I did my rewatch, I really loved it. So I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. But before we start, there's a question that I kind of have on my mind that I want to ask both of you. When you guys eat a hot dog, do you guys put ketchup on it? I just really want to know real quick.
Not if it's a Chicago dog. If it's a Chicago dog, never any ketchup. But also, I'm not a strickler, right? If it's not a Chicago dog, man, ketchup on if that's what you feel like.
Yeah, what about you, Raul?
That's actually kind of funny because I ate some today and I did put ketchup on it.
On a
did?
Chicago dog?
No, it was
Oh, just on that. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but
Yeah.
it did have the Jarnier relish on there.
Okay.
On there, so it's
The
it was a weird and mustard mayo.
the idea of not putting ketchup on a hot dog sounds fucking crazy to me. I, first of all, don't even like Chicago style hot dogs. I don't like pickles and I don't
I
like
do.
fucking mustard. So the idea of like having no ketchup on it's ridiculous. When I go to Portillo's, my order of a hot dog is ketchup, tomatoes, sport peppers, and that's it. That's what I get. But I wanted to ask you.
Ketchup at
Ketchup.
Portillo's.
At
Portillo's?
I'm surprised they don't throw their freaking leftovers at you. Like, oh, get out of here.
With tomato on top of it. But dude, yeah. So let's get at it. Let's get at it, guys. We're here to talk about the bear. There's going to be a lot of food conversation. There's going to be a lot of like kitchen talk. And dude, from
A
somebody
lot of
that
Chicago
just
food talk.
yes, from somebody that just like ate a shitload of like barbecue food like an hour before recording, which I should not have done that. Like let's do it, Ramon. Like get started. Tell us about the show for people that maybe haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you kind of make me wish at least I would have had Portillo's, right? Closest thing to a good
Fair
beef
enough.
around here. And if you guys even know slightly remotely about like Chicago, Illinois,
Buono is good too, though.
yeah. But see, but Portillo's is more of a staple as of Chicago, Illinois. So not quite this restaurant that we were talking about. Where what was the name of it? The beef. Of Chicagoland, or the original beef of
Yeah.
Chicagoland. There you go. Not that restaurant. I wish I could have had those exact sandwiches, especially coming from Chef Carmen. But at the same time, I'll take it what it is. But anyways, so this is a beautiful show that obviously kind of, and it pulls you in through the whole experience of the whole chef experience, I guess, and being inside of a kitchen. Which, again, to some people who haven't like worked through those kind of jobs in the service industry, I'm sure you don't know. Maybe this makes you curious. For others that maybe have worked in the service industry and in restaurants, it's probably just appealing to you to kind of know how they portray it. And just from like a little bit of experience that I had, even just at a place like McDonald's that, Carlos, you and I shared that in a weird way, like, it kind of hits a lot of the marks of the reality. And again, this is a whole different level of restaurants, right? So what we're talking about in a show where, Carmen, who's portrayed by Jeremy Allen White, who's freaking awesome in shows like Shameless, he basically gets inherited this shut up, bro. Watch Shameless. He gets inherited.
I didn't say anything. I just shrugged.
He gets inherited this restaurant by his older brother, who sadly you find out that he commits suicide. And so the show becomes just this major struggle with a family dealing with the sibling who has committed suicide, was an addict. And then they have a struggling beef restaurant, right? An Italian beef restaurant. And Carmen, the main actor, is a 5-star chef, or a well-renowned chef, I should say. He had worked at one of the best restaurants in the world at one point. And now he's back in this place, like trying to salvage this kind of piece of crap. Well, not necessarily a piece of crap, like very recognizable, like staple of the community, but still nonetheless not a great restaurant. And so, yeah, the show revolves around that. It revolves about the conflicts of not only the family drama, the kind of dealing with loss, dealing with the problems with addiction. And then also it just really deals with like the reality of the service industry in a restaurant, right? It wasn't a pretty picture. Like the show's not a happy like show the whole time. It's depressing. It's stressful. So anyways, great show. Lots of things to talk about in it. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, and for me, so this was the first time that I actually watched it. Like I've I heard about the show before when it was on, and it had like great reviews, and everyone thought that it was awesome. But like, I don't know, I have only so much time to watch stuff, and my list of things that I'm supposed to watch is like huge. So whenever you said it, I was like, cool, I'll finally get to watch it. Um, and at least that now I have a reason to watch it besides just wanting to watch the show. But yeah, like it was interesting. Like I'm a fan of like cooking shows and stuff like that. And then it also in a way reminded me of um the movie with Bradley Cooper. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's about a restaurant that they're trying to get a Michelin star. So like I've kind of followed like food shows and stuff like that. So this was interesting to kind of see the reverse, because typically like in the competition shows, it's people that kind of came up like they have their own business, and then they're trying to like be like real chefs and with all the classic stuff. And in this case it's backwards. He was a classically trained chef. He worked like in the like in France, and he ended up in New York, and in a restaurant that was named the best restaurant in the world at some point. And then you kind of see some of the bad things that you hear about in the fine dining industry, in the kitchens, that you have like these like super dick chefs that treat everyone like shit. But and they do it because they want perfection out of all the chefs and everybody in the kitchen. And then now he takes over this kind of like this dive restaurant, pretty much. That's kind of a staple. It's supposed to be a staple. There, it's kind of like it's kind of like if he went to work at the original Maxwell's or something. Um, and then you see the complete opposite of probably what he's used to. And it's just chaos, and he's trying to establish some sort of order, and it's so dysfunctional that they're in a ton of debt, and they he's trying to undo everything that his brother kind of did, like all the systems, and he's trying to retrain all the staff, and he's trying to dig out of this hole. But it just everything ends up kind of like piling on, and it seems pretty much like an impossible task to do, even for somebody that has so much experience and is so talented, supposedly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate, but that feeling of, puking right before you go in to do your job, man. Like, definitely not in my current job, but I've definitely been there where it's just like, I don't want to go in there. Like, please don't make me in there. And this is just you having this conversation with yourself inside a car before walking into like the office. But I related to a lot of things in this show, man. Like, I mentioned when I first watched it, I sort of kind of like you, Ro. Like, I heard great things about it. I heard that it was like awesome, great writing, and I watched it, but I wasn't really giving it my full attention. It was only until like maybe a couple episodes that I'm like, oh man, this show's really good. And then by the time it finished, because I think every episode's like 30 minutes and maybe the last episode's an hour long. By the time it finished, it kind of like left a taste in my mouth, but tasted like I don't know, something like I was trying to like describe what the flavor of what I had just watched was, but I just couldn't tell you what it was. So I was really happy when we found out there was a second season coming out. It's actually coming out maybe in 2 weeks. So we're like, hey, we really like this show. Let's watch it again, dude. And it's not till I saw it the second time that I really appreciated like the writing on it, man. Like there is so many, like this is one show. Like I rarely take notes when we're watching something or we're getting ready to review something. But this is the one time that I felt like, oh my God, I wish I had a notepad while I was watching the show, because there's so many small detailed jokes that if you don't catch them, like you'll forget about them. Not because they weren't memorable, because the show just keeps doing such great writing, and these funny jokes are so funny, or at least you kind of laugh in the inside. Like totally, you by the next episode you're forgetting about it because they continue to feed you like really good writing on it. Um, for anybody that doesn't know, there's currently a writer strike happening in California. It's been going on for like the past almost like 2 months now, or maybe like a month and a half. But guys, if we don't get this writing strike under control, like we're not gonna get great shows like this. We're no like AI is never gonna be able to write a show with this kind of like emotion level to it, human level, like the emotions, the things that it brings into it. So I really hope that gets settled in, and they figure out this whole situation with artificial intelligence at this point. But this show, I do want to say that the one reason why I wanted to watch it is because you kind of like said it, Ramon. But I relate to that actor because I watched Shameless. There's like 12 seasons of Shameless, probably more or less. And I really grew to see that kid from like a young boy to becoming a man. And maybe we'll get into some shameless conversation because I definitely have some bad things to say about what they did to his character, because his character was always be meant to be the one that was going to save the whole family. So just the idea that they threw him like they didn't do him right with the writing in that show. And then here it's almost like Lip did leave the family and then he started his own restaurant. It's like you're almost seeing a continuation of Shameless, even though it's not. And this actor, to be honest, if you have been filming Shameless for 12 years in Chicago and somebody tells you like, hey, I have another great show for you and it's in Chicago and you're also going to play kind of like like not a dirtbag, but somebody that's a little bit like on the sloppy side, you would be like, hey, maybe I don't want to do this because I just did something very similar to it. But just the fact that he did it and now he's getting like, in my opinion, like he was the one that maybe I thought wasn't going to become as famous, but like now I can see him being himself elevated to a different level and actually seeing more of him like in other things just because he's done such a great portrayal of this character. And I mean, I'm here to talk about it, man. There's just so much. I don't want to like, I know like Ramon, like, I mean, honestly, like this is probably the most we've ever spent like giving an intro to a show, like just because I think we just want to like talk about it all. But yeah, I mean, we can start with the first episode and kind of get an introduction of how these like characters got to meet each other. I will say though, even though his brother, sadly killed himself, I did think he saved his life by, bringing him back to this. And, even though most people in the restaurant like hated him in the beginning, they all slowly begin to understand that by this guy being here, he's elevating them to a higher purpose that they could have ever been. So it's so crazy, man. Like that's how it starts and where it gets to.
Yeah, I mean, quick note, because again, I don't want to waste any more time on this. We're not talking about Shameless, but you're right. If it wasn't for Shameless and people who watch Shameless, I know it sucks for all because you didn't. A lot of it does carry through in his like character because I don't know, it's weird. It is like Lip grown up, and to me, that kind of did a lot for it because I almost didn't even need to know Carmen. Like I didn't even need to like meet Carmi for who he was in The Bear because in my head he was straight up Lip from Shameless. But anyways, regardless of that, great acting by him and a freaking amazing show that he kind of put on. But I think one of the things starting off, like I said, especially in the beginning with that, yeah, it's that whole thing. Like I work as a manager, right? Like I've been a store manager for a long time, and it's just so difficult when you see those kind of changes come up where you get a new boss, you get someone new come in, and they have different ways of doing it, right? Like I have so much experience in my career right now that if I were to get a new job, you bet your ass I would probably go into my new job with a lot of like the same things that worked for me in my current one. But at the same time, there's always a kind of how do you work with that and how do you, keep the staff? How do you do certain things with that? And so I love that the show started with that, right? Because not only were you getting introduced to the tragedy that happened in the family and kind of you were bits and pieces getting of what really the situation was, but yes, you had this crazy environment that I'm sure everyone's gone through of like management change, right? And not only that, but it is kind of a dive restaurant and again, community staple, and everybody that's there is kind of part of the family. Most of them knew Michael, like the older brother, like everyone loved him, like everybody wanted to be there. Even his like cousin Richie, even though they're not truly cousins, I think we find out at the end. But it's like, it's like, so there's a sense of the community that is established there. And Carmi didn't come in to change that. He wanted to work with that, right? Because part of him being inherited this restaurant was to really kind of not only take it and make it his own, but make it work like his brother was ideally trying to make it, which again, he didn't know a lot of the crap that was going on the underside of it, right? Like in the alleyway, we should say. It was just kind of funny because there's some of the shady stuff was going on there. And but yeah. I think just a way to start that episode. Yeah,
you've never sold crack to try to keep the lights on in your house.
not crack. Not so but no, yeah. I mean, I think it's just a way introduction to a show that's going to be about working in a team environment, especially when again they didn't set up the whole brigade hierarchy until like later in the season. But know that's going to happen if he comes from like a classically trained restaurant environment. That's how restaurants work better. There has to be some sort of order and system. Otherwise, we're just freaking, doing whatever we want. And that was the first episode. It was like chaos, like pre-existing chaos. Everybody talked about don't change the system. And I'm like, dude, your system sucks. It's like
yelling, lots and lots of yelling.
Freaking Richie distracting everybody.
Dude, Richie and Sydney, like, those two characters, man, are so good. Like, all of them together. The episode with Sydney where she's kind of responsible for handling the whole kitchen, man. Like, it was legitimately stressful to watch. Like watching her try to
Oh god.
do people, like try to encourage people to do their job right, and then she's getting like a lot of like, either people are pranking her or purposely doing the opposite of what she's telling them to do, and she's having the worst fucking day. It was just it's so like
Her
I got
onions.
so somebody messed with her onions, and I was stressed watching that, man. I was freaking stressed. And it's
Yeah,
kind of like
no.
sometimes you don't want to watch shows like that because it's like I just came from a stressful day at work, so why the fuck would I put myself through it all over again? But it felt like that, man. It felt like you put yourself exactly through what everything she was going through.
Yeah, and then that's even later on, obviously, man. Like it's weird because when I was rewatching this too, with
It's like
I
episode
was
three,
think,
man, when it's like she gets like they give it to her. He's like, all right, I'm gonna go and do whatever, and he left her in
yeah.
charge. It's like even
Well,
right
that's
away.
that's the nice
He
thing
went
about
to
the
an
show,
I think he
the
went to
support.
Al-Anon
Yeah,
meeting
the
or
attic
something.
attic support meetings. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
and, and
okay.
and that's the thing. It's like so in rewatching this too. Like I remember, like also like briefly just kind of taking notes because I'm like, man, we got to talk about this in all in one about like the whole season, right? And it sucks
Hmm.
because it really is a show. Like we should do Bear season 2 in episode by episode because I couldn't. It was this overflow of things
That
to
was a
talk
lot.
about, and I know it's going to be really hard to talk about it because again, still even wanting to start in the first episode. I thought it was really cool how like Carmen already had the idea of bringing in the whole like fans of the Ball Breaker, the arcade game, all the fans of that game do a little tournament to try to bring more money in. And even that alone was freaking crazy, right? Because then you were still getting introduced to what kind of place this is. Well, clearly it's a place that has like a weird mix of Mortal Kombat and freaking Conqueror's Bad Fur Day mixed together. But man, it's just I don't know. It was just crazy. Like even that scene where Richie took out his gun and shot to scare like the everyone in line. And it's like chill the fuck out, everybody. Like stop, none of this crap. You like nerd freaks are gonna like behave. You're gonna come in here. You're gonna be orderly. So like I don't know. It's just like right away
You're
you
gonna
were
pick
really
up your garbage.
you're gonna pick up your garbage. Like no loitering. Like you were just introduced to all these amazing characters like right from the
Hmm.
beginning. And I mean, it was just it's a hard show not to be in love with right away. I mean, that was the majority of that beginning was just meeting everybody and their crazy personalities. Richie is the one that stuck out to me because I hated him in the beginning. Not necessarily
Oh
hated.
yeah.
I just thought he was annoying. He's the guy like at
Yeah.
work that it's like he knows what he should be doing. You know, he clearly was really close. He is really close to the family that they're on the cousin
Well,
terms.
he's the guy
But
that has been there the longest, and technically he feels like he should have gotten the position, but he went to somebody
yes,
newer and younger, and
yeah,
more, with more of the degree, the background degrees, to like kind of put it in a better way to what happens in normal day to day life in some of these places.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, like I could feel why he would be so pissed off that this kid came out of nowhere and just took over what should have been something he could have inherited, but obviously it was a family business, so why would he get it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he was all screwed up too, man. Like I always I found it very funny the episode where like I think Sydney's the one that resolves the problems with all the gangsters, well not the gangster but like the mob people that are like selling drugs or who knows what kind of
Oh
business
yeah.
they're doing up in front.
Yeah.
And he kind of like for a moment I thought he was like, oh cool, like she handled herself, good job. But then later on in the end of the episode, you find out like he fucking snitched. He's like he
Yeah.
called the cops on them, and it's like, dude, like holy fuck, that's the kind of person you're. You're a fucking rat. You wanna act tough, and you wanna be the one in charge. You wanna call orders, but at the end of the day, you were so pitied that you fucking snitched out like your people that you grew up with in your neighborhood just because you weren't the one that resolved the problem. It's fucking ridiculous. It's hilarious. Dude.
Well, I mean, that's the type of character that he was. And I think that's what he was really annoying in the beginning because, again, like you said exactly, it's like he was jealous. You know, he felt more entitled for the plays, but at the same time, he was just not good. And you do want to be like, oh, you're a fuck up. Like, you're stupid. Like that one scene later on when Sydney went off on him and she called him a loser. Like, I was really emotional
And
because,
stabbed him.
yeah, well, I mean, that was, stabbing
Oh, that was
bad.
my accident.
But no, yeah, I mean, like that whole thing is like there's a lot of this part about Richie that makes you want to dislike him, but then the bits and pieces that we get of his like stuff that he's dealing through are really sad, right? Like he's divorced. He has a daughter that he doesn't really see a lot, and then his
Hmm.
daughter, and again, maybe you guys, because you guys both have children, like his daughter, like called him because he's the one that can console her. He's the one that can help her through it. And he's like, baby girl, like, you got this. Like, don't let him bully you. Like, you're the best. You're amazing. And it's just like, you couldn't go in that scene without like tearing up a little bit, because so far you've been like, Richie, you're a dick. Richie, you're stupid. Like, oh my God, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you're not in the right place. And then we go through the whole show and you get to meet more about him and even his anxieties, like his struggles, the way that he's kind of like somewhat of a little petty criminal in order to save this place that he loves, and for this family of like the chefs or like the cooks and everyone there that he's really invested in. So yeah, I mean, he turned out to be one of those like, man, I love this guy. Like,
no, it's funny. He's the kind of guy that goes to the hardware store and doesn't really have an idea of like what he's looking for, but he'd rather like take a chance and just ask for help. And like, honestly, from somebody that does a lot of construction shit, like I think I've been there multiple times where I'm like, fuck, I gotta go back just because I grabbed the wrong tool.
I mean, Sydney saved his ass on that one, but yeah, it was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Because she called it. She was like,
yeah,
I got it. I got the right one.
No, and that's and honestly, if I took my wife to me to the hardware store, that probably would happen to me a lot more. Like she would be the one like asking for help, and then we would get the right part to begin with.
Yeah, and then that's also the other thing too that it's really interesting about the show is kind of the whole fact of like why she applied there, because she applied to like be the sous chef, and then the really the only reason why she did was because she went to New York and she was trying different restaurants, and the best dish she's ever had in her life was Carmen's dish that he made. So that alone was the reason why she went and tried to work there. But I think she's from Chicago anyway. But
yeah, she had her own she had her own catering company named Sheridan Catering or something like that. So that's that's a big street in Chicago that.
Well, dude, it's one of those things where, like, if you find one of the number one cooks in, like, the world, it's all of a sudden working in, like, the restaurant down the block. It's like, dude, I don't care if he's, like, not going to pay me. Like, I would work for him for free just to be able to pick up some stuff that he can teach me. Or not even that, just to be able to put him on a resume. So it's, like, almost like an internship. And I'm surprised he didn't have a whole line of people, like, begging him to, like, hey, dude, like, I want to work in your kitchen. And maybe the show could have gone that way, but obviously it chose not to, because they want to also, like, say, like, hey, this guy didn't just come in and fire everybody. He acknowledged that these people have been working in this kitchen forever, and he tried to improve them. He tried to like continue to work with them. The one guy that like frustrated me, and like the one guy that I think should have been fired, though, it's the guy that makes the donuts. So he's trying to make the most perfect
donut. Guy?
Oh, wait, why though, Marcus?
Dude, I understand him and I get it. But just the idea of like, I don't know if he's paying him hourly. I don't know what their arrangement is. Like maybe he's not even paying him. But it's this idea of him just hanging there, and like most of the fucking time he's just like doing his own thing. It's like, dude, I am surprised he didn't like stab him or fire him a lot sooner in the season.
Yeah, Marcus was one of the characters that I had a problem with. And again, I don't have like in general, I love the show, and most everybody did amazing, and there's like nothing really that I'm like, oh my god, these persons suck. But I think Marcus and his character Marcus, like I feel like that was one of the ones that I struggled with the most. Not because of his like. Yeah, because like Raul was starting to say, of course, he's inspired by Carmen, right? Once he realizes Carmen's legit, that Carmen can cook, and then he starts looking into him. He finds this Momo book. He sees that he's awarded. He starts like pulling up some of his dishes, and then he gets inspired, right? Then he's inspired that he wants to be better. He wants to do more stuff. He goes and looks for inspiration, like the donut shops, and he tells this beautiful story about like growing up. He just loved the whole idea of like getting a donut just to kind of basically stare at it, like study it, like just more of that than just like eating it, and so I love that part of him being inspired and him trying to like really do what he could. But yes, as a worker, he was definitely slacking. He was procrastinating. He was more involved. I mean, he was really focused on his like dream project than his actual job at the time, which cost him a few issues, right? But I think in general, him, even like towards the end, like when it's him and Sydney talking at the end, I just feel like that actor, I don't think it's the actor, I think it's just that character, because I have the same issues with Sydney. I feel like they could just draw a little bit more emotion under certain scenarios, because if I would have just been like outcasted out of my job and my boss would have told me like, get the fuck away from here, are you fucking kidding me, and like pushed you away, I would have been more angry. I don't care if it was like the next next day having dinner, like I would have been like, that fucking
Well,
bitch. Like, what
well,
the
dude,
fuck? Yeah.
yeah, because same thing that you said, Ramon. Like, I really enjoyed the character. I thought everything about him was great. This whole thing, like, you're trying to perfect what you're doing. Like, I'm not a cook myself, man, but if I ever, there are a couple dishes that I make, and every time I'm trying to perfect it, I'm trying to like learn from it. What did I do wrong this bad last time? What can I get inspired to make it even better? So I understand that. And as a character, his portrayal, the conversations he had with people, like, I really enjoy that. But like, again, as a worker, it's just like, dude, you're fucking annoying me. Like, he got mad the day that Sydney accidentally set up like the online orders, and they were like stacked with like all of a sudden like you gotta serve these 100 people in the next 10 minutes, and he's fucking like bringing this like donut to his face. And I understand he was kind of like memorized by the idea that he almost had perfection in his hands, but dude, it's like read the room, read the freaking room. Like levels could not have been higher. Like nothing in that tells me that and I'm gonna call him Lip, so excuse me for that if I'm getting confused. I'm gonna call him Lip. He should have not even apologized. So in my opinion, he didn't do anything wrong. He's the one responsible for keeping this place running. So I don't understand this whole like, oh, he came back. I would have been like, what the fuck are you doing? They're like, you quit, get the fuck out of here. I don't care about your perfect donut. Go start your own business. But again, I'm not running a business. So what do I know?
I mean, and that's maybe like from a management perspective, or just all that. Like, I don't know. I got all that, and I think it's just, that was the 7th episode that we was trying to talk about. Like, we should save that for the end because that was a beautiful, beautiful episode. That was like the one that was done in one shot, all in one place. Nothing ever changed, and well, I want to address this specifically. But no, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know, like in the beginning, what else happened that was really huge? They had the health inspection. They got the C.
Oh
And remember, I think that
God.
was a significant episode or
Well,
part where, yeah.
Well, like I mean, for me, like the biggest thing that kind of puts the stakes very high in the show is when the uncle comes in and it's like, hey, I lend your brother, and I guess he's like probably a mobster. Like, hey, man, like I lend your brother like $300,000, and it's like, dude, things for him have already been like super stressful with trying to like have money to pay like his cooks, order the meals, like get napkins, all this stuff, and then for the idea of this guy just coming out of nowhere and be like, hey, before your brother died, like I let him borrow
Yeah.
300, and like I understand his frustration because it's like, why did you do that? Like, why would you have done that? Even if it's family, like, what made you think? And I think the only reason you think he did it is because he probably understood that if the brother didn't pay him back, he would be able to take this business, which we all know real estate in Chicago is really expensive. Especially if you're like in some back, like if you're close to downtown at all, like it could be really good like real estate spot. So maybe that's what the uncle was thinking. Like, hey, if this guy doesn't pay me back, I can always take the business. And clearly, he's even trying
That's
to
what
do
you
that in the
wanted.
beginning. That's what he wanted. He's trying to do that with Lip. Like, hey, you're not gonna be able to get out of here. Like, just sell it to me, sell it to me. But to me, that really set the stakes about like, oh shit, like how is he gonna get out of this?
Yeah. I mean, there's the two sides of the show, right? There's that we were talking about in the beginning when we were introing it. That is just like the whole family loss and discovering what was really going on with Michael. Was a big, huge part of it. And I think that's what you're playing on. It's like, yes, that was a significant part in that side of the story, was that discovering little by little what kind of stuff like Michael was getting into, right? Like he even had Richie dealing crack out of the alley just to try to make extra money.
Hey, that was during
You know,
COVID.
yeah, and then that was, I mean, but yeah, but still, right? It's like clearly at some point he was pocketing slash stealing money anyways, because we found out at the end that he had all that money stashed up. So, but at the same time too, you also have like not only the shady stuff that was going on that Carmen didn't know about and he's discovering, but then you had the whole thing of the actual loss, right? You have his sister, who's like at this point just really trying to figure out like if he's okay, like why is he taking the restaurant, like they at this point, this was a family restaurant, like the dad started it out of like his crazy like I want to do a little bit of everything, and then he says that one day he like became an investor for Edebiri, which is another Chicago staple, and then ultimately he just wanted to open his own restaurant, and it was a family restaurant, but apparently it was like bad luck, everybody was miserable because of it. And I think that is a great part of the show, that as you're discovering more about the history about the restaurant, and then seeing like kind of the tension and all the drama that is causing Sugar and Carmi, and then even Richie, even though he's not like really family, like he thinks he is. So then it just becomes this really weird dynamic of like, hey man, like you shouldn't even be running this restaurant because it's pointless, it's shit, like it's causing so much headaches. Like clearly, like your older brother, like Mikey, like he was going through stuff, he was an addict and he killed himself. Like why even be here, right? And clearly then later that was a big part of the show, is that freaking Carmen had a whole thing to prove, right? Like we were talking about in these other anime episodes with Demon Slayer. It's all about like sibling and families, like that whole relationship of like he wanted to prove to his brother that he could make something of himself. And that's why he went to study, and he wanted to be like the best chef he could, because the more and more and more that he did it, the more that he felt like one day his brother was going to say, "Hey, Carmen, good job," right? And because he didn't get the chance to do that, then the restaurant was the only thing that he could possibly do to prove that. So yes, absolutely. That I think those little bits and pieces in the beginning, as you're discovering more about the family, are like significant, because I mean we're following Carmen around, and it's the story about his life basically. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and then also at one point he's explaining how, because there was a point where Mikey didn't allow Carmen to go to the restaurant at all or whatever, and then he kind of felt like not guilty, but like he felt like attacked by it, and that's part of the reason why he went to like culinary school and went crazy, was because he was trying to prove that like I deserve to be working in this restaurant to his brother, but his brother wouldn't allow him to even like visit or whatever the restaurant at all, and then
No.
and then he ended up dying and left the restaurant to him, and he's still trying to grapple with that whole thing with like, you didn't even want me here, but you leave me the restaurant kind of thing. So
No,
Yeah, it's like a big fuck you at the
crazy.
same
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was. I found it cool when he was telling like his backstory. And yeah, like I found it cool that eventually he got to the point where he became so cocky. He just knew that everything he was doing was the best. Like nobody could compare to him.
Mhm.
Like he was just doing like incredible things, never self doubted, full of confidence. And it's like, dude, I can totally picture like this dude just like a fucking robot. Like he's doing a dish with a bunch of other people, and he's just like doesn't give a fuck about them. Can like mellow them out. Doesn't get distracted by anything. He's just like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it in this time frame, and it's gonna be right, and it's gonna be perfection. And people are gonna be like, "How the hell did this kid do this so quick?" And I love that, man. It kind of gives me understanding how this kid could have became so famous at such a young age. And everything that everything that they show his flashbacks working in that one restaurant, the most popular or famous restaurant in the world. Like, dude, it was
Mhm.
just so fucking like everybody looked miserable, man. And the way that chef would talk to him, dude, it was just like fucking terrible, dude. Imagine like your boss like coming and telling you all these disgusting
Oh
things
God,
and being
no.
like, you fucking suck and try again and call me this. And you know what's the worst fucked up part about it, dude? At the end of the day, when everything goes right, he's like calling you to the back and he's like, hey, you did a good job, man. You did a good job. I can't wait for us to do this again. And then the next day, he fucking continues to disrespect you like that. And you know why somebody like that does that, dude? Because they know they have a good person. They know they have somebody they can count on. They know they have somebody that's going to take them like even more farther distance than they could have done it on themselves. And even though like Lid did the right thing, like his brother dying and having this situation where he has to like quit his job and go back to Chicago and run this business, probably the best thing that could have happened to him. Because dude, like that guy was never gonna let him go. That guy would have like, even if there was an opportunity for him to have gotten his own restaurant, because it could have been like maybe like a franchise, like he would have never done that, because he would have kept this guy under his like grip. And I know fucking people like that. I know people that'll take advantage of you just because you have a kind heart. So it's like, dude, that was just fucking stressful, man. And then like I just found out the actor that played that chef, and I was like, holy fuck,
Joe McHale.
I didn't even reckon even more of a
Yeah.
reason to like punch his fucking face.
I hate him as Jeff in Community. I love the show, but it's just he's so annoying. I'm like, Jeff, get the hell away from here.
I love Joe McHale.
I like
Yeah,
the
I mean,
I like
again,
the,
he's good, but he's
yeah,
annoying
Yeah.
too.
I liked his show in the soup that he did. Like that was always fun to
Oh
me.
yeah, that was a good one. I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I think go ahead, bro.
He was also in the Enrique Iglesias, not Enrique,
Oh my,
Gabriel Iglesias show.
yeah.
Okay.
I
Where
forgot
he's
he
a
even
teacher.
had that. Yeah. No, I mean that's so see that's even just like stuff like that. I don't know, man. But I think one of those things is like again, so yeah, like you're saying, like Carmen comes out of all that to come back to work at the restaurant, right? And so what is he trying to prove? And then we talked briefly about that, how he's ultimately being like, fuck, like why'd you leave me this restaurant after you never wanted me to like be here, right? But at the same time, like he clearly just goes for it, like he wants to do it, and like all the things that at that point, like I've seen him like break down in the beginning, and I was having problems with that because you hit up on the whole anxiety thing from the beginning. What I was thinking about was like the moments like when he started showing his like break that he couldn't even handle it, or perhaps I was getting nervous that he couldn't handle it. Like when he forgot the cigarettes, right? Like that's what I was saying. The second episode, they get to see for the review because someone forgot the cigarettes by the stove, which is a giant hazard, and he fucking goes off on Richie. Like, right, he blames Richie because he's the fuck up, because he's the person that can't get anything done. He's the one that's not taking it seriously. And, you know, by the end of that episode, he goes to freaking Pat looking for his cigarettes, and he just realizes that he's the one that fucked up. And it's like moments like that you're like, oh man, like, so he's not perfect, right? Yeah. Who cares that he worked at this crazy restaurant? Like, who cares that he has this vision of turning this now dive restaurant into something better? He's still clearly not experienced enough in this environment to make it work, which, you know, that's the whole, yeah.
Dude, my wife, like, lately our daughter has been grabbing her things and hiding them. So, like, anytime my wife loses something, it's like she goes to tell, like, our daughter took it, like, and she's constantly like, where did you put them? Where did you put them? I lost my glasses this week, and, like, the idea crossed my mind that she could have hidden it, but I never grabbed her. I never said, like, she took them. I'm like, if they're found, they're going to be found. 5 days later, dude, they came up in my car. Same thing with her headphones. This idea that, like, oh, she took them. Give it a couple hours, she found them. And it's like, it's so easy to like try to blame somebody else on the thing. And that's something that I learned. There's times, because I've been there, like where I blame somebody and in reality, maybe it's my fault. So there are situations where I now understand it's better to just either let it go and just forget about it. If you find it, great. If you don't, it's gone. But it's just like, yeah, man, like, it's so freaking insane with some of these things. But, you know, guys, like, you know, I wanted to just kind of take a quick break. We haven't done this in a while, man. And I think this is an episode to do it. But for anybody that's been following us, been listening to us, I just want to keep saying it. Like, I don't have any like kind of like a funny setup, but, you know, keep telling people about us. If you like us, be like, hey, you know, like, hey, friend of mine that I've known you for years, you might like this, guys. Why don't you give him a follow? If you have a mom and she has an Apple iPhone, grab her phone and subscribe her to our channel. Have her give us a 5 stars. She doesn't have to listen to us. I will know, but you know, just you know, spread the word, tell people about us, because you know we're gonna be doing a lot of cool things in the future. And the more we hear from our fans, the more we get to understand what you guys want to hear. The more you let us know that you exist. You don't understand how much me and Ramon and Raul, like, we love our fans. So like the moment like we realize like, hey, I've been hearing your show, all of a sudden you're gonna be like elevated to this level of like, hey, can we be friends with you? Can we like talk all the time? Can you join our group chat so we can like, you know, have conversations? But it's like, yeah. So again, if you've been enjoying us, please continue to like just follow us, listen to us, tell your friends. But no, let's keep it going, man, with the bear, because this is a fun one. I'm having a lot of fun.
Oh here. Man, it's good. It's just so much to talk about, man. I'm thinking of like another big significant thing.
Can we talk? Sorry, I'm gonna like just throw this out there, but I think this is gonna be like a really funny thing to talk about. Can we talk about how much they hated the brother-in-law?
Oh my goodness. he was one of those like, and we got done talking about it as we were watching him. It's like, why do we hate him? Like, we hate him too. Like, he's just one of those guys that sometimes you just don't want around, right? Like, he didn't like freaking, he wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't obnoxious in a way of like he's stupid or like doing things, but it's just the way that he portrayed himself, like freaking Pete. And you know what? When we first meet him, like we're more dealing about like the whole Carmen and his relationship, right? Like clearly there's something that happened there, and they're not even like talking, but also like Carmen calls him and he has to call him because he can't get a hold of his sister. And you start hearing these like weird like things, but then at the same time, Richie's like, oh fuck that guy, like no one likes Pete. But then that scene where they're at the party when they catered the party for their uncle, for Cicero, and oh my god, even Jimmy, even Cicero, like it's like, oh my god, and do you guys know Pete's here? He came to drop off the presents but never left. Like, and then like everybody's going in on freaking Pete. But you know, by that point, like I think Carmen was already like somewhat at least understanding him, because there was a one scene where he's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm truly sorry. But regardless, it took me a second to really realize, like, why do we hate him? Like, I don't even care, I guess. I hate him too. The scene in the car when he's like freaking falling asleep on the Xanax, and he's like on Richie, and then he's like, freak away from me, and then he's like, we there yet? And then it's like Carmen, and
not saying like I'm a like a Richie like, but I've been in situations where like there's a group of people hanging out and like I want to be cool, I want to go hang out with them, but it's like you also got to understand, like, feel it right away, understand like, oh shit, this is a clique that I'm never gonna be able to fit in, or if I am, I have to be slow about it and like not push myself. And he's just like totally pushing himself to like be their best friends like any way he can, by either relating to what they're serving or relating to like, hey, I know everything about you. I followed you. I read all your articles. I'm probably your biggest fan secretly. And it's just like everything that he's trying to do is just not working out. So it's kind of like hilarious, the idea that, yeah, this dude that's like super nice and actually would be a very positive person to have in your family. Because if you ever need something, he'll probably be the guy that could bail you out of jail like without like second thought. But
Oh
they,
yeah,
they, they refuse to accept them. So it's freaking hilarious.
Raul. Who's the
I,
Jim? Who's the Pete in our group? Just
Oh my
kidding.
god.
no, I think the thing about him is that like he tries too hard, and he's kind of
Yeah.
square, or and it's a
Absolutely
combination of
square.
like different things that make him like not necessarily likable, but he because he's a fine guy, but he's just not likable. He just doesn't
Yeah.
have the like charisma, or as
Kind
the
of
kids
makes
say, the riz.
it kind of
Yeah,
makes
because
you
they have.
wonder, kind of makes you wonder like why the sister married him or what she saw in him. I don't even know what he does as like for his like day to day, but it's kind of funny. And like, bro, you're also never gonna not gonna understand this reference because you've never watched Rick and Morty, which, again, let's not even talk about that. But it's almost like a situation with like Beck and and the dad. It's like, how did they ever? I mean, you kind of understand that relationship, but it's like you truly want to know how these two guys like got together, these two
But I
individuals.
do have a theory about that, and then it's a serious one actually. So another thing in the show that's another like underlying tone or topic of the show is, I mean, I grew up in Chicago. When I first came to the United States, I lived in Chicago, and I lived there for like about 7 years before I moved out. Like I was still young, so it's not like I can say I had these adult experiences, but the reason why we left Chicago is because of gentrification, right? Like they basically said, "Hey, we're gonna turn your apartment building that you have like 7 people living in into a condo. Now it's gonna go from like 600 a month to like freaking 1,200, 1,500 a month. You can't afford it because you're Mexican, so get the frick out of here." And we had to relocate for that. So this show actually does talk about gentrification quite a bit, right? Like that's the thing that they're talking about when they're talking about the restaurant is, oh man, things are changing in the neighborhood, right? That one bar closed down. Like there's things happening. Like someone's thinking about turning one of the developments into like a like a maybe a Starbucks or something. They mentioned briefly. So I think the whole thing with Sugar and Pete actually is a kind of part of the discussion of gentrification. I think Sugar might have been like, okay, I'm part of this family where we struggled, we lived hard, but I want to marry into like a yuppie or I want to marry a yuppie. I want to marry into this guy that's successful, that makes money, that he's not crazy. He's not gonna go over here and sell crack, or he's not gonna go like shoot up a neighborhood.
Oh,
And I think that's what it is. I think the show is just
yeah.
playing on that. Like, hey, we want to evolve, so let's marry the next like up in
The
the level. But you don't need that.
Dude, it's funny because he mentions that they're turning it into a sweet green. And I never knew what that was. But if you go to Naperville right now, there's actually a brand new sweet green that opened in downtown area. And it's actually looks freaking cool. And when you go inside, it's
What
like
is it?
nothing but it's just nothing but healthy food. So it's just funny that like I was watching the show, they mentioned like that's gonna become a sweet green. I happened to go to Naperville that same weekend, and what fucking opened? A fucking sweet green. And I'm like, before this show, like I didn't even know this was like a franchise or whatever. So it's just like totally funny how that kind of worked out.
Damn, yeah. But I think that's what it is. It's a topic on that. I don't know. I don't know. Another part of the show is just like how they all learn in the kitchen how to work together. And we were
Mm-hmm.
joking earlier about the whole Chef Ramon, Chef Raul, Chef Carlos, but I think that's one of the coolest things about that whole
Yes,
atmosphere is
Jeff.
that yeah, exactly. That he wanted that atmosphere because it shows the matter of like equal respect all around. And that was cool, man. Everybody in their experience was like, Tina didn't get it. She was like, "You calling me Jeff?" Like what? And then the rest of the show, she's calling everyone Jeff. But so that was a really cool, like seeing them also kind of learn how to work together and be equal and be inspired, and I don't know, that's cool.
No, yeah, dude, and like, I mean, some of the things like with the other characters in the background that hopefully they get a little bit more of a spotlight in the second season. It's like the one guy that used to play for the Cubs, and like he's telling like the story, like he's offering the guy that like what's his name, the guy that makes the donuts. He's like saying like, dude, if you need to like someplace to sleep, like you can ask me. You don't need to be sleeping here in the
Oh
restaurant. I can
yeah.
relate to that because I used to be with the Cubs or blah blah blah. And then like the guy listens to the whole story, the guy walks away, and then all of a sudden, like it hits him, like, "Wait, you used to play with the Cubs?" So that was freaking hilarious. It's like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
he
yeah.
doing there?
Yeah, because uh, there's a point where you kind of notice these like random other people that work there because you have that guy that he's like
You got the
he does something in the
Mexican, like
kitchen.
the
Yeah, yeah,
Mexican
yeah,
like guy that's the cleaning the dishes, right? Yeah, that's
yeah.
what he does. He cleans the dishes.
There's two guys that are washing dishes. Oh, I think he's the guy that like cleans up the floor or just cleans up. I don't know what he does exactly, but
Okay.
he does a lot of cleaning. But yeah, like, and then you have the one I think Puerto Rican. I think she's Puerto Rican. That also works in the kitchen, and then you have the bread guy, and then
Well,
Sydney
you got that one
and
guy also
the
like so desperate to like be part of like the payroll, and I am
oh
like,
yeah
dude, why?
the handyman guy.
The
Yeah,
handyman
he's
guy.
probably the most like stereotypical Chicago guy in the whole show.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, because everybody is like real Chicagoan, right? But he's like the stereotypical, like he's the one that you just imagine saying the Bears, and you know. But he was funny though. I think he was the one that like the show already has like this like very serious comedy to it. I mean, it is considered a comedy, but it's
Mhm.
I think he was just the one that you just laughed because, like you said, Carlos, he just wanted to be part of it, and just so much of what he did, and oh, that whole concept of they had the family meals, right? And everybody was in charge of like making the
Mhm.
family meals like a night. But he always like right in the beginning, he's like, "Oh yeah, for me," they're like, "No, you're not part of the family." But then he was there every single time, though. Like he was there every single time, so he was basically part of the staff and the roommate of
Yeah,
the
and I have a question because
yeah.
it might be me because I live in Chicagoland or whatever, but like I in a way I was kind of expecting like stronger Chicago accents, but I didn't really get
Mm.
that. Or am I just used to it that it didn't
Uh,
sound weird?
it, you
Or
might
do they
not be
have an
used to
accent?
you might not be used to hearing them because even I, unless like I hear like a person from Boston that I, and we don't talk to people from Boston very often, or a person from New York,
We
and
don't
then you're
like those
true.
people. I'm kidding.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not even talking about like in television or actors. I'm just saying like the moment you pick up a phone call and somebody from like New York, Boston, like you talk to them, like you understand, like, oh shit. Depending on which part of the U.S. I'm like talking to, like people do have these accents. So like maybe we just didn't translate on TV, or maybe I just hear it, but don't really pay attention to it. And again, like Lip being like Carmen being the same character as Lip doesn't even like he's not even like trying like a new like I talk differently or I have a stutter. Like he's legitly, like we said, like the same character to me. Like it never really, like I never like felt that role. Like, oh, like this town's not being represented the way it should.
Even brought his cigarettes over from the other show. But anyways,
Because even
no.
Cicero's house was in Naperville. They're like, oh, we got to go to Naperville, and he
Well,
even
it
talks about
was
like
in
some of the
Naperville.
surrounding.
It
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was,
was
but
in Naperville.
then yeah, but
Wilmette.
then it was somewhere else. I forgot where.
And
Yeah.
Wilmec. But no, I mean I think that's another thing too, is just because the staff is so diverse that it's not necessarily like, unless you had like a guy like the handyman who was like white guy, probably European descent, and they're the people that kind of like grew up in that area and kept the
Like a
Chicago thing. But
Polish dude.
everybody yeah, but everybody else was like, like mixed Latino, like something. And so I think it's
Italian.
harder,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't have a Chicago accent, and I grew up there for like at least 7 years as a kid when it should have been and as I was learning English. So you think if anything, stuff like that would have stuck. But you're right. We still go to other states in the United States, and there's still things that we say that sound just a little bit different to everybody else. I just think again, we might be used to like the
Yeah.
subtleties that we didn't catch
Oh,
on. But
yeah.
yeah.
Even like people from Mexico, like depending on which part, it's like people say things differently. Like I was just having a conversation with somebody from like where my family is from, Durango, and they were like we were talking to my wife's side of the family, which is from like another place in Mexico. And I was talking to this Durango person. I was like, "Hey, do you guys say this or do you say that?" And she was like insulting me because she was trying to explain to me what a what is it? Oh my God, why
Mazapan.
can't a mazaplan is, or yeah, like a mazaplan. She was trying
Uh,
to explain it to
I
me,
love
and I was
mazapanes.
I know, no, but I was like, please don't insult me by like trying to explain to me what a Mazaplan is. Like, I know what this is. Like, like, I'm from Durango. Like, you don't have to do that. But it's just funny, like the other, like, again, we're all from different parts. We're all gonna sound a little bit different, and you just have to like be able to not just focus on the way somebody sounds, but understand what they bring behind the voice. Like, what is their logic level? What ideas do they have? And it's easy for you to look at somebody who doesn't sound like you, doesn't talk like you, and for you to all of a sudden be like, well, I shouldn't be 100% listening to, like Ramon. He just walked away. Like, oh, I shouldn't really be listening to what this person's saying because like he doesn't sound like me. He's not really representing the ideas that I have. So it's like, even though this person could legitimately be a brilliant, smart person that got to this position because of their talent. So it's just like, again, this is kind of like, it's an interesting thing that you brought, Ro, but like, yeah, like I don't think, to go back to, like, I don't think I ever felt like Chicago again wasn't being represented the way it should be.
Well, no, and it's just funny because it did clearly have a lot. It was pushing the whole Chicago narrative like quite a bit. But I mean, again, that's I love it because again we're familiar with it, and it's a huge part. But I feel like if
And I love
someone asked me,
Italian
it's like,
beefs.
yeah, no, I mean
Yeah.
that's a whole different story. Oh my god, we haven't even talked about like how much of the food you would want to eat and
Oh my God.
everything.
All of
I,
it.
but I was telling Kiara, I'm like, one of the things, like, everybody always says like, hey, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? I think, weirdly enough, maybe not my top choice, but my second top choice in superpowers would be to be able to reach into the TV or like just freaking bring out the not the show food that they do like in the actual filming, but what it's supposed to be, right? If like I could pull that risotto with the freaking cola braised beef, like, oh my goodness, like the freaking cake,
Like,
the chocolate cake with the orange
Hmm.
zest on top.
dude, like my
uh,
like my brother-in-law is a cook, man. Like, that's when he got out of high school. He's like, I want to be a cook. He's worked in the kitchen. He worked at Cooper's Hawk for the past like 5 years. He finally like was able to get another position, a higher position somewhere else. But dude,
yeah,
to this day, anything, and I'm saying anything that he makes, I will eat it. Like, if even if I like ate an hour ago and all of a sudden he comes to my house and is like, hey, I made this dish. Do you want to try it? Like, I will eat it, dude. Because if you have somebody in your family or somebody that can cook, man, like they are really somebody that you should respect. You should never get on their bad side because like this person's gonna bring you so much happiness, not by like having conversations with them, maybe not by like building some like crazy memories, but just the idea of like he's feeding you these dishes that you're gonna remember. And every time you like maybe have something similar, you're gonna be like, this is good, but it's not the way this person made
not
it
the
because
same.
yeah, so like, dude, I have high respect for anybody that has that level of art with food and can do these like majestic, amazing dishes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I know we're getting kind of like towards the end of all this because it's just, again, we could talk about this for like hours and all kinds of
Mhm.
stuff. And I don't know, that second to last episode, I think is one of the most significant in the whole show and is really worthy of like talking about. It's the one that's the review, right? Like Sydney accidentally gives the plate to a
Oh
guy who
yeah,
she didn't know was and that was part of
the
the
critic.
previous
Yeah.
episode, to the critic, right? But in the seventh episode, it starts with that, right? One of the chefs is reading the review. Like you could tell that Carmen in the back is already kind of not bothered that it happened, but he's already like, I told you it wasn't ready. Like what happened? She had just set up that new like ordering system, right? That eventually right away started creating the
Jeez.
freaking chaos. But that whole
The
episode
pre-orders.
was
Yeah.
filmed. Yeah, that whole episode was filmed in one shot, in one location. Like if you guys, and it was a short episode. It was 20 minutes
Mhm.
long. But if you guys go back and watch it, they
Oh,
never left that
really?
area. It literally, yeah, it was 20-minute episode. I
Dude,
even like
so
watched it
much
for
happened.
exactly, right, because that's the same one where like people start falling apart. Sydney can't take it because no one's like still. She's lacking the respect and she can't get everyone organized. You have Marcus over there still fucking around with his donuts. That's eventually with Carmen like freaking throws that fit and basically causes Sydney and Marcus to walk out. And by the end of that, it's just like that whole episode was just so impactful because that was probably the climax. It was the breaking point. It was the point where he kind of just realized that I pushed way too freaking far. Like no matter how much I'm trained and how much I can put up with this shit, and I've dealt with this in the past, it didn't mean that it was the same for everybody. it doesn't mean that he can treat everyone the same way. And especially in this scenario where, like, yes, you already have something like the freaking pre-order system going like amok. It was that, and then it was just the whole stress of everything. But Lip and Carmen lost it. And I thought that was just a great episode because, yeah, like you watch that episode, it's super quick, you're super chaotic, you're like, what the hell? Like, I just woke up from this, like, what just happened? And then it goes into that very last one. That's beautiful because he has like a freaking 8-10 minute monologue when he's in the support group, right? And that's when he finally tells his story about like what the restaurant means to him, what his brother means to him. And I don't know, man. I think those last two episodes to me were just like probably not even a roller. It was like an hour's worth of just like emotions, and you understand more in those two episodes than you do in any other episode because the show is telling you, it's like, hey, okay, fuck, we climax. It's the craziest of the craziest. Let me decompress you by telling you like why it is as bad as it is. And I mean, again, great performance by Carmen in that, where he's just freaking made me feel like I'm part of that family and I'm going through the same struggle. But yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, all I'm gonna say is like, when the show finally hits like that moment before it ends and the season wraps up, I was definitely glad that we got an explanation of why the show was called The Bear. Because throughout the whole season, I'm like, man, like why the fuck is this called The Bear? And then finally we get that The Bear coming soon, and it's just kind of like hilarious. And I'm excited for it, man. I haven't even seen the trailer for the second season because I kind of want to go in with like no expectations of what's happening or what this restaurant's gonna look like. But I think it's gonna be a fun one, man. Like you mentioned, Raul, like people are really listen to this episode and it becomes one of our most populars. Like shit, like let's do it a favor and let's talk about this show like
Week by
weekly.
week.
We have a lot to say about it, and hey, next thing you know, maybe they'll be inviting us to the season 3 premiere of The Bear.
As long as they have that food, I'm down. Let's go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we're real quick. It was funny, right? Because we never did mention the bear, right? Like the bear in his mind, the bear in his memories. I mean, his memories, his dreams. That was like how the show started. I thought that was really significant, and again, I don't think it needed to be addressed because it wasn't so like such a major thing. But I mean, did you guys agree, or at least my whole concept of that? Because it would be silly if we don't talk about it. My whole like idea behind that, it is definitely the anxiety and the stress that he's dealing with. It manifests itself in this bear, right? Like he has to be able to tame this bear in order for him to like
Which
be
bear?
happy.
This bear, Ramon? This bear?
I don't know. I think this bear right here. What about you, Raul? What bear do you have?
I hope people that are
I
listening to
moved
us
it.
like on
This bear.
Yeah, there you go. There you
I
go.
hope people that are listening to us like only on audio are like, what the fuck did they just show on screen?
Oh my
And
god, dude.
if you're wondering, just go to like the 55-minute on YouTube or something. You can see what we're showing you.
Yeah,
I promise it's nothing
We're showing you our bears.
absolutely. All of our bears, all the three little bears.
We're bearing ourselves.
Yeah.
But Ro, any last thoughts you want to say? Because again, you're the one that saw it for the first time, so I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. So any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, like to kind of reflect on everything that you guys said and reiterate kind of part of it too. Like it's a show that's kind of stressful to watch, but like in an entertaining way, and you really do get invested with everyone. And I think the pacing was awesome. I don't know. It was just it was very well done, and everyone gets like enough spotlight, and the story is a good story, and kind of everything makes sense, and you really get invested in trying to figure out what like why everyone is kind of how they are, and then you see the progress, you see like things develop, you see people grow, you see people change, you kind of see like where everything's going, and you want to know what the destination is going to be. And then the big thing that we didn't mention is like Mikey, the brother, when he was borrowing all this money, he was putting it in cans of tomato sauce, and then they finally found it and discovered it because of the family spaghetti, whatever.
Yeah.
And then that's the reason why they closed down the original beef or whatever, and they're gonna turn it to the bear. So they're gonna remodel, and they're gonna who knows what they're gonna do.
Well, did you always hear stories of people like cash either inside their mattresses or whatever, and it gets thrown out, and then that's when people find the money. And it could have been like that for the situation. They could have thrown those cans, and like that money would have never been found. So it's like, dude, like, yeah, this guy was not thinking very well. And it's funny, we never even mentioned, like, did we mention that the actor that plays his brother by any chance? Just to give him
No,
like
John
credit.
Bernthal. No,
Yeah, the
no.
Punisher, which it's always
I
awesome to
love
see it,
him.
man. Yeah, he's great, and it's kind of sucks. Like, I don't know if there'll be more flashback scenes with him in the second season, but he's
Hope
always
so.
like
I'm sure they
lovely
will.
to have.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this has been Carlos, and I'm gonna have a good night. I think, Raul, you're ready to go to sleep. I know as soon as we turn off the camera, you're just gonna pass out. But
He's not even gonna take his little
already got my
headphones
beer.
out. Yeah, you got your beer. There you go. That's great. Perfect.
all right, Ramon, say goodbye to everybody.
Hey, have a good one, guys. See you next time.
See ya.